In this video you will hear the story of how my own uncle stole everything from our family. He rewrote the inheritance in his name and thought no one would ever fight back. He was wrong. This is a story about betrayal, about the truth you cannot hide, and about revenge that changed his life forever. He was my uncle. To everyone else he looked kind and generous. He laughed the loudest at family gatherings. He always said he would help if times got hard. I trusted him like family. When my grandmother passed away we all came together. I thought we would remember her life. I thought we would share her memory with love. I thought everything would be fair. I was wrong. A few weeks later I found out the truth. My uncle had rewritten the inheritance in his own name. The apartment, the small house, the money, everything became his. He did not even say it to us directly. One day the papers arrived with official stamps. There was no space left for anyone else. I still remember the moment I walked into the kitchen. He was sitting at the table drinking tea like nothing had happened. His face calm, almost smiling, like he had done something good. He only said this is better for everyone. But his eyes told me the truth. He was proud he fooled us all. The feeling inside me was not just anger. It was betrayal. Betrayal from someone you trusted your whole life. I knew that day I could not let it go. I did not want to shout or fight. I wanted him to feel the consequences the way we did. The first step was to learn how he pulled it off. I studied the documents. The signature looked strange. The date did not match where my grandmother was that day. She had been in the hospital. The nurses said she was on heavy medication. She could barely hold a pen. That was the first clue. I reached out to a lawyer I trusted. He looked at the papers and said there were many questions. He explained that we could challenge the will if we proved she was not capable of signing. But I needed evidence, so I began searching. Neighbors remembered she almost never left home in those days. A nurse admitted she could barely speak. But no one wanted to testify. They were afraid of my uncle and his connections. They knew he could make life difficult. I refused to stop. I found old letters written by my grandmother. She wrote that she wanted to leave the house to her grandchildren. She described the room where we played. She dreamed of us growing up together there. It was her true wish. Those letters were powerful. But still not enough. I needed something official. I asked for medical records. I visited the hospital. I spoke to the doctors who treated her. Most avoided my questions. Some looked away. But one finally gave me a copy of a report. It showed she was sedated that exact day. It was impossible for her to sign legal documents. That report was the turning point. I felt my plan forming. Not just to fight him in court, but to expose him publicly. To make him face what he had done in front of everyone. My uncle started to notice. He called more often, acting friendly. He tried to sound calm. But I heard the nervous tone in his voice. For the first time he was not in control. While he tried to hold his image together I built my case. I met with the lawyer again. We prepared statements. We gathered witnesses who were finally ready to speak. And I contacted a local journalist who had covered cases like this before. My uncle made his first mistake. He tried to bribe relatives. He offered money, cars, promises of comfort. He begged them to stay quiet. Some were tempted. But others refused. And word reached me quickly. The cracks began to show. At a family dinner he raised his voice. He argued over small things. He looked tired, stressed, desperate. He was no longer the man who smiled at every photo. He was a man afraid of losing everything. Then something unexpected happened. A family friend found an old paper report in a dusty box. It confirmed my grandmother was under heavy sedation during the signing. This document was official. It was undeniable proof. When I showed it to my lawyer his face changed. He said, "This is it, this can break the case." For the first time I believed justice was possible. We filed the case in court. And at the same time the journalist published a small article. No insults, no drama. Just facts, dates, documents, witnesses. The truth. People started to talk. Neighbors looked at him differently. He could not hide behind his fake smile anymore. Even his close friends stopped calling. And then another blow came. A neighbor uploaded a short video. It showed my uncle holding new keys to the apartment, laughing with the notary beside him. That video spread fast. Everyone could see his arrogance. Everyone could see the truth. By the time the first court hearing was announced he already looked broken. I sat next to my lawyer in the courtroom. I thought about my grandmother. Her voice, her letters, her dreams for us. I promised myself I would not stop until her wish was honored. The judge called the case. My uncle walked in looking pale. He avoided eye contact with everyone. For the first time he looked small. He sat down quietly and waited. The judge asked questions. My lawyer presented the documents. The medical report, the letters, the testimonies. Piece by piece the truth came together. My uncle said nothing. He just shook his head. His hands trembled as he tried to hold the table. His world was collapsing in front of him. The judge announced a break. We stepped into the hallway. I saw my uncle standing near the door staring at the floor. His face was a mix of shame and anger. He did not say a word. And then two men in suits entered. One of them carried an envelope. They walked straight to my lawyer and whispered something. My lawyer's face changed instantly. There was tension in his eyes. When he looked at me, I knew. The fight was only beginning. The two men handed my lawyer an envelope. Inside were new documents. Fresh signatures, fresh stamps. Another will suddenly appeared. This one claimed to cancel the previous papers. It looked like my uncle had prepared backup plans. The lawyer frowned. He whispered, "This is fake, but it will slow us down." My uncle smirked for the first time that day. He thought the delay was his victory. But I did not feel defeated. Because every move he made created more cracks in his story. The harder he tried to cover himself, the more obvious his lies became. That night I could not sleep. I sat at my desk looking at the letters my grandmother wrote. Her handwriting shaky but full of love. I heard her voice in my head telling me to stay strong. I knew I had to push harder. The next morning I called the journalist again. I told him about the new documents. He asked if I had proof they were fake. I said not yet. But I promised I would find it. Days turned into weeks. I visited the notary office. I checked every log, every signature, every file. And then I found something strange. On the day the second will was supposedly signed, the notary had not even been in town. He had signed papers miles away in another office. The record was clear. That was the evidence we needed. We exposed it to the court. And the judge's face tightened. He asked my uncle's lawyer how this was possible. There was no answer, only silence. The media picked it up quickly. Local news ran the headline. Family inheritance forged with fake documents. The comments were brutal. Everyone saw my uncle for what he really was. His business partners started leaving him. People he had called friends stopped answering his calls. He became isolated. And I felt the revenge growing stronger every day. But I was not finished. I wanted him to feel the weight of every lie he told. I wanted him to live the shame he created. So I planned something he never expected. I gathered every letter, every testimony, every record. And I organized a family meeting. Cousins, uncles, aunts, all together. We sat in the same house he tried to steal. I stood in the center with the documents in my hands. I read the words of my grandmother aloud. Her wishes, her dreams, her love for us. The room was silent. Some cried. Some clenched their fists. And then I looked directly at my uncle. He sat in the corner, pale and shaking. He could not escape. Not from us. Not from her words. For the first time he lowered his head. For the first time he had nothing to say. The court case continued. But the battle was already won. Because everyone now knew the truth. His reputation was destroyed. His power gone. He had nothing left but fear. And I was not done yet. Because revenge is not only about winning. It is about making sure the guilty never forget. So I prepared the final step. Something that would end his control forever. I knew the final step had to be public and undeniable. Not a private revenge. Not a whisper in dark rooms. It had to be a moment everyone would remember. We timed everything with the next court hearing. The courthouse would be full. Reporters would be there. Neighbors. Relatives. I wanted the truth to arrive like a wave, loud, clean, impossible to ignore. The morning of the hearing I packed the extra files into a thin briefcase. Letters, medical reports, the notary logs, the video of him with the keys, the copy of the sedative report. I felt heavy but steady. My family gathered quietly behind me. My grandmother's faded scarf sat folded in my jacket pocket like a talisman. Inside the courtroom the air felt tight. My uncle walked in with a forced calm. He scanned the room and his eyes fell on the faces of those he had deceived. Some glared. Some avoided him. He sat as if the chair could hold him upright when everything else slipped. My lawyer stood and presented the last set of evidence. He explained the timeline. He showed the camera logs that proved the signatures could not be real. He read aloud the nurse's testimony about the sedation. He spoke with a calm that cut through the room. The judge listened. He asked questions with the patience of someone who wanted certainty, not spectacle. When the notary's office phone records were displayed, the room murmured. One by one the links between my uncle and the forged documents fell into place like tiles in a cracked pattern. My uncle's lawyer tried to stall. He produced excuses and alternative explanations. But the more he spoke, the thinner his arguments became. The evidence was not just papers anymore. It was the sum of lives shown in handwriting and receipts and voices. Outside the courthouse a crowd had gathered. People whispered about justice. Some held small signs. A few local neighbors had come to watch the man who had once been a warm face at family dinners confront what he had done. When the judge returned with the decision, the room seemed to inhale together. He found the will invalid. He ordered the reversal of the transfer. He demanded a formal apology to be recorded on the public record. He ordered a review of any other transactions my uncle had made in the months before and after my grandmother's death. My uncle's face drained of color. He sat with his head between his hands. He did not protest. For the first time his mouth was silent. But the legal victory was only the start. Laws fix papers. They do not always fix people. I wanted him to understand what he had taken, not just lose it on a form. So we made the apology public. With the judge's permission, we recorded a formal statement. My uncle was required to stand and speak the words he had hidden behind smiles. He read a short apology into the microphone. It sounded thin and practiced. It did not erase nights my grandmother had spent trusting him. But the statement was now on record and everyone could hear it. After the hearing, I did something people did not expect. I did not scream. I did not gloat. I walked to the front of the courthouse and I spoke to the crowd. I told them about the letters. About the room with the flowers. About the small things my grandmother loved. I told them about the way betrayal feels, a slow unthreading of trust. And then I said what I had always planned to do next. We had set up a small fund during the court months. Money had come from relatives who wanted to repair the damage. Neighbors had donated. People had reached out after the journalist's piece. I announced that we would restore the apartment the way my grandmother wanted. We would fix the garden. We would make a small scholarship in her name for the neighborhood children to keep her wish alive. The crowd applauded softly. Some cried. My uncle watched from the side. There was no fury in me then. Only a quiet satisfaction that truth had led to repair, not only retribution. In the weeks that followed, my uncle lost more than the inheritance on paper. He lost trust. Former business partners dissolved ties. Some neighbors refused to speak to him. Word traveled fast and burned bridges he had built with charm and money. He also tried to fight back. There were angry phone calls. A lawyer who sent threats. A few attempts to find dirt on the witnesses. Each time we had documentation ready. Each time his moves only deepened the record against him. Months later, a small council in our town decided to review notaries and tighten rules for elder signings. They asked for my input. I spoke to lawmakers about simple changes that would prevent the same trick from happening to another family. It felt right to turn a personal battle into policy that protected others. My uncle retreated from the public eye. He stopped coming to family events. Once, at a distant cousin's funeral, I saw him standing alone under a tree. He looked older than his years. I felt a complicated thing then, not joy but a deep, tired relief. My grandmother's house slowly returned to life. We painted the walls her favorite color. We planted flowers in the small garden she loved. We set up the scholarship and watched neighborhood kids open the first envelope with tiny smiles. My uncle wrote letters of apology to relatives. Some were accepted. Some were not. He tried to make amends in small, awkward ways. It was not my place to judge how others forgave him. I only knew I had done what I set out to do. Months later, I sat on the same kitchen chair where I had once confronted the betrayal. My grandmother's scarf lay on the table. The house was quieter but full of small good things. I thought about revenge and what it meant now. It meant standing for truth. It meant restoring what was lost. It meant making sure the person who broke trust could not hide behind smiles again. I still keep the letters in a drawer. Sometimes I take them out and read a line or two. They are gentle and honest and they remind me why I fought. I do not feel proud of causing pain. I feel proud of defending what was right. On a rainy afternoon, I walked past the park where my grandmother used to sit. A child ran by chasing a dog. A woman sat reading. Life moves forward in small ways. I smiled and kept walking. The fight changed me. It taught me that patience can be stronger than anger. That work done with care can topple what looks immovable. That truth, once gathered and shown, has a force of its own. When my uncle finally called me months later, it was short. He said he wanted to talk. We met for coffee in a neutral place. He looked older, quieter, and for the first time not defensive. He apologized again and then asked how the scholarship was doing. I answered honestly and then I stood up to leave. I walked out feeling the weight lift in a way I had not expected. The revenge I sought had not turned me into someone hard and cold. It had shown me a way to make wrongs right. and for the first time in a long time I felt something like peace.